I will never forget the bitter chill of that morning. Though the California sun shone warm and golden over the endless acres of my father's estate, the air smelled of roses from the funeral wreaths, but to me it reeked of betrayal. As I stood on the marble steps of my late father's 900 billion mansion, clutching the letter he'd left for me, I heard the heavy iron gate slam shut behind me. My stepmother, my father's glamorous, cunning second wife, smiled coldly from the other side. "You don't belong here anymore," she said, her diamond earrings catching the light like tiny shards of ice. I froze. My father had been gone barely 2 hours. His body hadn't even reached the crematorium, and already my stepmother was cutting me out of the life I once knew. A childhood of distance growing up, my father was a man who existed more in headlines than in my home. Billionaire tech mogul, visionary investor, philanthropist. To the world, he was untouchable. To me, he was the man who sent gifts instead of hugs, who built empires instead of memories. My mother had died when I was 7, and from that moment my dad buried himself in work while I was raised mostly by nannies. Then came her, Isabel. My stepmother swept into our lives like a storm. She was 20 years younger than my father, elegant and sharp-tongued. At first, I thought she might be the mother figure I'd lost. Isabel was never interested in being anyone's mom. Her affection for me was sugar, sweet only when Dad was watching, but the second he turned away, her mask slipped. She made me feel like a guest in my own home. Subtle digs, locked doors, quiet reminders that my father's world belonged to her. I kept my head down, focusing on college, waiting for the day I could build my own life far from hers. But no amount of distance prepared me for the call that changed everything. Your father's had a heart attack. The funeral, his death hit harder than I expected. Despite the years of distance, he was still my father. The man who taught me to ride a bike, who used to tuck little notes of encouragement into my school lunch when I was small. At the funeral, cameras flashed as celebrities, politicians, and CEOs arrived to pay their respects. I felt out of place among the sea of black designer suits and whispered condolences. Isabel played the grieving widow perfectly. Her makeup was flawless, her tears controlled, her hand resting dramatically on my father's casket. When I tried to approach her after the service, she gave me a smile so sharp it could cut glass. "Your father loved you," she said softly, "but the world has changed. This is my home now, my life. You should move on with yours." Then she turned to the estate lawyer and whispered something I couldn't hear. Minutes later, as I tried to enter the mansion to retrieve a box of my father's belongings, the security guard stopped me. "I'm sorry," one said, looking almost embarrassed. "Mrs. Fontaine's orders. You're not allowed inside." I stared at him in disbelief. My childhood bedroom, my father's study, the memories of the few moments we'd shared. All of it was suddenly behind locked doors. The letter I spent that night in a cheap motel on the edge of town, numb and shaking. Among the few things I'd managed to keep was a sealed envelope with my name scrawled in my father's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single page: "My dearest Ava, if you're reading this, it means my time has come. I regret the distance between us. My choices were never meant to hurt you, but to protect you. I know Isabel will fight to keep you from what is rightfully yours. But I trust you to find the truth. Go to the old vineyard in Napa. You'll understand when you get there. Love always, Dad." My heart pounded. The vineyard. A place I hadn't visited since I was a child. Why there? The vineyard. 2 days later, I drove up to Napa, following my father's cryptic instructions. The vineyard had been abandoned for years. At least, that's what I thought. But when I arrived, a caretaker greeted me by name. "Your father said you'd come," he said, handing me a heavy leather-bound folder. Inside were legal documents, trust papers, property deeds, and a second letter. "Everything I built is in this trust, Ava. Isabel will inherit nothing beyond what we agreed in the prenup. But you must fight for it. These papers are yours, but the courts will need proof of my intent. Use the recording hidden in my study, behind the portrait of your mother. I left it there for you." I felt a surge of hope. My father hadn't forgotten me. He'd planned for this. To the battle, armed with the trust documents, I returned to the mansion. Isabel's smug expression faltered when I demanded access to my father's study. "You have no right," she hissed. But the law disagreed. The estate lawyer, now aware of the trust, ordered the staff to unlock the doors. Inside the study, I found the portrait of my mother. Behind it, just as my father said, was a small safe. Inside was a USB drive. The recording was heartbreaking. My father spoke of his love for me, his regret for letting work and Isabel come between us. He detailed the trust, prenup, and his wish for me to continue his charitable projects. It was undeniable proof. When we presented the evidence in court, Isabel's aid crumbled. The prenup left her with a generous settlement, but the vast majority of my father's $9 billion estate and the mansion she'd tried to steal was legally mine. A new beginning the day I walked back into the mansion. I expected to feel triumphant. Instead, I felt a quiet sorrow. The house no longer felt like home. It was too big, too cold, too full of ghosts. I didn't want to live in a cage of wealth and memories. Instead, I honored my father's final wish. I sold most of the properties, keeping only the vineyard. I used the money to fund scholarships, hospitals, and programs for kids who grew up like me, lonely, longing for a parent's love. Isabel vanished from the public eye, her empire of manipulation reduced to a footnote. As for me, I found something my father's billions could never buy: purpose. The message. Looking back, I realized my father's greatest gift wasn't the money. It was the chance to write my own ending. He taught me that family is more than blood or wealth. It's the choices we make to honor love, even after loss. The mansion, the fortune, the power, none of it defined me. What defined me was the strength to stand on the other side of those iron gates, locked out but unbroken, and decide that my future would be built not on money, but on meaning. And that is a legacy no one can ever take away,